Hey, all right, let's get started pouring the weight onto one leg, stacking, mobilizing. Is there a way that I can find that midline from my leg all the way through my leg, let go of all the tension in the leg, stack the bones? Is there kind of an interesting neutral midline I can stand through the leg and let go of tension in the joints and change in direction and pouring the weight onto the other leg, stacking, mobilizing the ankle, the leg, all the way up through the pelvis. Hey, David, and change in direction. I got it. I got it. And the knees and change in direction. And hip circles, feet are shoulder width. Again, is there a way to organize so that I can let go of the tension in my joints? I can kind of stand through this midline, this interesting central channel. I can let go of the tension and stand through this connection through the bow weight point in the top of the head and change in direction. Hey, June, how about change it up a little bit? I'm sinking onto one leg. I'm going to keep this left side pretty static. And then I'm going to lift my right pelvis up, back, down, and forward. So I'm just trying to mobilize one side of the pelvis, and the other side, I'm just going to kind of keep in one place. It's okay if it's like impossible, you know, you kind of drool a little bit, it's okay. Just planting a seed that you could just mobilize the one side and then going the other way. Still the right side, but just going the other direction. And then the other side, up, back, down, and forward. and change in direction. Great, great, great. Finding the ground, looking for this neutral, this central channel, and standing through that, standing up through that and rolling the shoulders forward. Standing up through that and rolling the shoulders forward. And then rolling the shoulders back, finding the ground and rolling the shoulders back from the ground. Again, looking for that kind of empty neutral you can stand through. I'm not leaning on my joints in any way. I can find this really interesting line of connection. Pouring the weight into one leg, and then from that left, I'm in my left leg, from that connecting to my right shoulder and coming up with that and forward, and then sinking into the other leg and the opposite shoulder comes up and forward. For me, that really helps me to see, oh, I could be more open in my lower back, in my pelvis. I could get the whole quad to be more available diagonally through the body. And then rolling back one at a time, sinking, rolling the opposite shoulder back. Eight, great. And how about finding again that neutral, that central channel, and then just rotating around that. Let the arms go. Let the arms go. And maybe just for this time, keep the head facing forward and just let the spine relax. Try to just do it from the lower body and let the upper body just emerge out of that. Great, great. And then swinging the arms left to right. Let the weight of the hands help your system to let go. Like, oh, I can feel that I'm a little bit stiff here or there. I'm a little bit rigid. And just swinging the arms, the weight of them helps me to gently free that up. And all the while I'm standing through that midline, that central channel, I'm kind of relaxing into this interesting buoyancy there. Great, great, great. How about we come back to Wuji, shoulder width with the feet. Feet are parallel. Over time, if our feet are not parallel, that will start to damage the knees. So we want our feet parallel. Finding the bubbling well slightly behind the pad of the foot. And then I'm looking for a sense of stacking or a kind of straight line through the weight point, straight above the ears on the top of the head, like I can just let my body go into this pure line from the bubbling well through the weight point. My lower body is sinking, just naturally magnetized to the earth, and then my upper body is naturally being pulled up to the heavens. So we're softening the knees. The pelvic floor is maybe a little bit of a slight lift through that, but not vulgar, just very gentle. Very similar to putting the tongue on the roof of the mouth. We're not gripping down there. And then the lower dantian, tanden. But keeping our awareness really curious there. Like go back to that as we're doing the practice, go back to the tanden. What's it doing? Oh, what's it showing me now? And then relax in the whole upper body, relax the rib cage, the chest, behind the chest and the back is a real volatile spot, and relax the shoulders. The base of the skull is a little space in there. The tongue's on the roof of the mouth. The eyes are soft. They're open. And then above the ears, a little sense of buoyancy there. That will just give us a slight sense of daylight in our spine and the base of our skull, but not forcing that. And then there's a little space under the armpits, but not much. Don't force it. Don't be exaggerated. And the hands are full. Cotton balls are in between the fingers. Don't be unnatural with the arms. This is I think a pretty tricky one. And then maybe as you put your arms out, did you feel your pelvis just tighten a little bit? And if so, could you just melt that a little bit and find that neutral with the pelvis? Don't control the breathing. Like maybe some of you get into this position and it's like this process starts to take over. Like, oh, my breath just dramatically shifted. So don't add a breath onto that, a breath technique onto that. Sinking through the qua, sitting down, letting the arms come up too. Hugging the tree. You want your knees safe, so keep them over the feet, meaning I'm not letting my knees go beyond the toes. So I've got to fold through the qua and sink straight down so that my knees, I can still see my toes. Some women can't because of the breast up, but keep your knees over your toes as much as you can. Don't force it. But I can look down and see my toes out. Okay, I'm all right. If you look at my arms, it's like I'm hugging this tree, or I'm holding a ball. If your arms are kind of, whatever they're doing, make them natural, round. And then remember, of course, this is lower body work. It's lower body work. And again, the pelvis is just neutral, and we're letting go of all the tension in the joints. We're not leaning forward, not leaning back. Let's do 10 minutes in this posture. And if you, I'll announce after 5. So we're not holding this posture rigidly. There's internal movement happening the whole time. We're just not outwardly expressing it. We're letting it, instead of outwardly expressing the movement, we're just softening. Continually, we're letting the door open. Wherever there's inner movement, we're letting the door open. And again, maybe what I thought of my body, how I how I use my body, how I imagine my body to work. Maybe there's something else going on here. Like as I sink into this neutral, why is it that my body starts to become buoyant? Why is it that when I sink and let go, my body fills up? It must not be that me holding myself up all the time, trying to, make this posture happen. That must not really be the point. There's something else going on here. That's about 5 minutes. We'll do 5 more. And so there's a sweet spot with this stuff. So like say your arms are tired right now. And why are my shoulders get tired here? So um, is there a way in which I'm efforting in a way that's just really inefficient? Like, do I hold my arms in some kind of extreme? If they're in extreme, they'll get tired. So can I hold my arms in such a way that my structure feels soft? It feels like it's a little bit slack. Instead of laying it all out there and trying so hard, maybe I can come back a little bit. I can just come back. And then there's some kind of neutral I can give my body to. A lot of us, we're just trying so friggin' hard. But oh, when I let go, when I find this neutral, oh, I can actually give myself to this neutral. Oh, there's something else going on here. I can relax into this neutral. Keep the tongue in the roof of the mouth. And just, really simple. Is there a way that my hand, could feel supported from my structure, from the ground. And so if I'm efforting too much, then I'm not allowing my structure to support itself. I'm trying too hard. I'm gripping. So you can't grip to be supportive. You've got to, relax that pelvis. Find a way from the ground through the pelvis and support the hand, support the elbow. About one more minute. Again, is there a way to make it real? And I'm doing the posture, but it's easier. Like maybe there's a hidden buoyancy there that we have to uncover. Great, great, great. Let's try another one. And if you hit your limit, those who hit your limit, I think this posture is pretty good. So my hands are coming straight out here. I'm not reaching too far. But for the rest of us, let's stand in the river, sinking straight down. This posture, I think, is helpful because it's a different way of orienting in space because our arms are out to the sides rather than in the front. So then we've got to find the midline in a different way. Okay. So I'm not reaching out so much that my shoulder starts to um, yell at me, right? And the nerve doesn't start to grip a little bit. And then I'm not so soft. I'm not so like uninvested that I'm not really feeling anything. There's a sense of I'm reaching and my whole body starts to kind of connect. And of course, fold through the quad. And of course, this is lower body work, right? So we're sitting down on that, through that neutral, we're sitting down. So I'm not on my heels and I'm not on my toes and I'm sinking down. Lower body, this is lower body work. And as the body starts to kind of liquefy or melt, as it starts to kind of warm up, is there some kind of internal movement there? Like, oh, there's some sense of movement through my system. And then a lot of the practice is just creatively like giving up our feeling, our ideas about it and letting it do its work. It's just like bonkers. We don't know how to do it. We're so in control. We're so hyper vigilant. So we stand here to creatively learn how to let go into that. And the eyes are open. Of course, they're staring at the horizon. Remembering to check in with your pelvis. Is it neutral? Did I start to grip in my lower back? Did I lean onto my toes or my heels? And and also letting this sense of inner momentum be the guide. Like, what can I do to let this inner momentum happen more? To let it, how can I get out of the way of that? You hit your limit, go on back to Wuji, or go on back to standing with your hands in the front there in the leg. A lot of people feel the tendon for the first time in this posture for some reason. I think it's because people often feel the tendon in the lower back at first. And this one, because our arms are out to the side, it somehow um, reveals that aspect of the tendon. Wonderful, wonderful. Shake off if you need to. This one, um, if you're not up for it, then just stay in Muji or just pour your weight onto one leg. I'm gonna pour all my weight onto that right leg and I'm stacking, I'm relaxing my pelvis. And from there, I'm gonna hug the tree again. So I'm all my weight's in that right leg. Okay. And I really think the one-legged posture is helpful. If it's too much, just let your arms go. But rooting into one leg can be really interesting, really helpful. Tongue is on the roof of the mouth. Don't control the breath. Sometimes the movement, the inner movement will feel like a type of breath in there, like I'm here, I'm breathing, and then there's like this more subtle breath. It could feel like a vacuum, could feel like a very a subtle, slow, unfurling breath in there as the chi mobilizes through the system. It's like a second breath. And then let's try the other side. Pouring, connecting, stacking. Of course, keeping the joints safe. We're not hurting the joints. My right leg is pretty empty here. And does your body make sense in space, or are you kind of fighting gravity? Could you stand a little bit differently so that you'd feel harmonious in gravity? We're stacking the body, stacking the bones, and then all the soft tissue can just drop into the ground. And that creates a type of stretch in the system, and that stretch, that's where a lot of this space in the body, this kind of internal power kind of comes through. Relaxing. But let this inner movement happen, creatively letting this inner movement happen. Wonderful. Coming back. I feel like because we're in this starting to cook in this immersion, let's take some time in if it's just pure Wuji for you, or if it's just letting go into the non-directed for a little bit of time here. Let's I think what we're doing is there's some mobilization of the energy, and now we're going to see what it wants to do. And let's take away some rules there so that we can really engage with it, really let it happen. Maybe our trying to do it right is a little bit of a it's a little bit of a governor we put on the process. We're kind of blocking the process. So just letting go of the postural rules for letting go of our control for a few minutes. It's not going to be like it was yesterday or the day before. It's going to be what it is right now, and that's where we've got to work with it right now with what's happening and what we're encountering. I don't know about you, but I think often we just have a preference for what's going to happen. We're there and we have this preference, like I want this to happen, and We're just like that. And when you stand here and you stop controlling, something else starts to happen, and that totally, totally strange for us. Oh, this is trying to happen. I have to let that happen. What's this is trying to happen. maybe it's like we're here and we're in pain or we're sad or we're suffering and Corey is suffering here, you know, and as we stand here, maybe we just totally feel what's happening. We just totally, all of ourselves just totally feel what's happening. There isn't Corey suffering, there's just suffering. There's just this thing that's happening, and somehow in that we just dissolve, and we start to feel good. Somehow there's something about this. I am suffering, or this is happening, that this division. How can we just unify? Let all of our cells come into one. Let all of our cells just unify. And we have our thoughts, they're there, there are thoughts going on, and yet maybe there's something else happening here. And little by little, this more interesting thing starts to take over. There's this, something starts to pull us into it, and we can let that take over. Our thoughts might still be there. We're not going to kill those thoughts to make this thing happen, but just the other thing, this really interesting thing trying to happen, takes over more and more. It's okay if nothing happens too. It's not about trying to make something happen like, boy, I'm not doing it right. I'm not making this thing happen. This thing isn't happening for me. Well, what actually is happening? That's how we encounter it. What's happening for you right now? And feeling that and letting that door open. One more thing, taking the ball out in front of our belly, sinking. And let's take that ball up. I'm sinking into the ground. I'm in the ground. I'm using the ground as a wall. My elbows are heavy and I'm gently taking that ball up into the heavens. And then at your own pace, coming back down with this heavenly energy down, washing down through the body. Anywhere that's a little bit sticky, we're just letting that kind of melt down like honey, just dripping down, softening wherever we're a little bit rigid. And then at the waist, I'm turning my hands down, my fingers are pointing down, and I'm going down the body. And any old stagnant energy, rusty, just letting that out down into the earth. And then at your own pace, coming back up, this healthy earth energy up, bringing up through the legs, through the knees, obviously through the legs. And then at the waist, at the tendon, we're just going to go around and wash the kidneys. I like to actually rub the kidneys, but you don't have to. You can keep your hands off the body if you like. And then coming back out front, holding that ball, and again, finding the ground and softening the whole structure. Taking that ball up into the heavens. And at your own pace, coming back down, washing down through, melting like honey, like butter, just melting down through the wherever we're a little sticky, just gently letting that melt. And then again, turn the hands down and going down the legs, down the body. Back up. Washing the kidneys. Back out front. Holding the ball for just a second, finding this neutral, sinking, softening all the joints. Finding vertical, finding the upper body floating up and the lower body sinking, softening the joints, And then let's just totally let go of the hands. Rubbing the hands together. Rubbing. Down the outside of the arms, up the inside, down the outside, up the inside. Rubbing the kidneys, down the outside of the legs, up the inside, down the outside, up the inside, down the back of the legs, up the front, down the back of the legs, up the front. Okay, okay. I'm gonna give a bow. Let's do a quick bathroom break and then come back for the social hour. Please stay if you can. See you later if you can't.
While we wait, can I show you what came in the mail today? This guy. Do you see it?
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
No, somebody gave that to me.
Oh, cool. Who gave that to you?
Nobody knows.
Awesome. And for everybody, who is that statue? Do we think you know who that statue is?
It's Furumyo. Yeah.
Say that again.
Furumyo.
Awesome. Well, cool. Thanks everybody so much. Great to see everybody. Great to see you in class. Thank you. And I hope a couple people pop on, see if they do. Everybody's busy here. Hey, John Murphy. See if a couple more join us here. I hope they do. But I would love to hear from people how their practice is going, how if they have questions, if they're struggling or whatever. And I'm recording this so other people will watch it. So knowing that your questions will definitely help somebody else. So yeah, please feel free to share that. Again, people either are going through the same thing or they have or they will go through often the very same struggles. And I think something not really talked about too much, but I really feel like the old masters, the old, in the tradition I was in, the Zen masters, that they all went through struggles and they all went through this whole energetic process. And so, just knowing that it's really a part of it. It's a part of it really as it deepens, So and as we make it real and make it actualize it. So anyway, I think that anyway, it's a process that we're going through. So questions, comments? Breakthroughs, struggles. And also, June had mentioned this to me yesterday that maybe we could have a time when people, they said, I've got this issue that I'm working on, and we could spend a little time with it, so maybe with the year-long program, maybe with one of the Zoom calls coming up, but where we take half hour and we kind of tease it out and we explore it. So I think that could be really good. So give me your topic suggestions, please. If it comes to you and either send it to me. Maybe that'd be good.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Jessica. Something I've been struggling with, and I don't know if my group has advice, but I have trouble breathing, and it's like kind of like a health thing, with like my oxygen saturation levels. And I know that like when you're doing Zazen, you want to like have an extended out breath, but because of this like oxygen saturation issue that I think is a post-COVID thing, I feel like I'm gasping for air. It's really easy for me to notice when I'm like still. So I don't know if anyone else has dealt with something like this and how you guys work through that.
It's a really, really great question. I'd love to open it up to people to talk about. It's really great, really great.
Hey, Jessica. And Victor. Um, well, I had a lot of breathing issues, all sorts of different stuff. Um, so I don't think it's probably just COVID stuff. I think it could be just, or in addition to that, it's just like part of the challenge of the practice. And I don't know, one thing that um occurred to me is I think when you hear something like susulkan or like extending your out breath, there's some idea you have in your head of what that is and that you can apply it to how you breathe. So I'm gonna this okay. I think I know what you're talking about. I'm gonna try and do that. And even at least for me, even just that a bit of like force in your mind of what it's gonna be can like totally mess up your breathing, like very profoundly. Um, and we just like don't think it will because it's so subtle, just that. But what I found is that with breathing, it's like every breath is something that you have to experience and it comes to you and um sort of um becomes its own process, you know? And so you're kind of following it. You're kind of discovering the breath as it's happening, maybe is one way to think about it. And letting it kind of um guide the process rather than thinking that like the breath is something you're going to guide and that's going to somehow deepen you or something like that.
Yeah, I resonate with that because I feel like the more I think about my breath, the more it psychs me out. And then I'm like, I can't breathe. Thanks, June.
Quite a bit of experience here. Love it, love it. Out here, love to hear from more people. Love it.
Hi everyone. Hi Jessica. Well, I can say for myself that I've had a lot of issues breathing. I have asthma. I'm very allergic, and I resonate deeply with what June said and try to apply that. So maybe okay, there's Susokuka. There's a way to do that. That's ideal. But what is happening now? Do I need like a long breath? Extending to the chest, sometimes I just breathe the way my body wants. Maybe I'm like low on oxygen and don't realize because my mind is superficial. So taking, the time to let your body breathe the way it wants to, before Zazen or, you know, and in karate, which I practice, there's a lot of strong breathing, like deep breathing, holding the tongue and throwing it out. That makes sense for me. I don't get so tired when I do that. So there's all kinds of experience we have with breathing. But I have to tell that I have a lot of issues too. But nowadays, when I'm doing Sokuka, it's like what June said, the breath is guiding me. I'm not really trying to do anything with it. So just relax with that. There's no method. At some point we have to drop everything. So it's good to just experience what your body wants, breathe the way it really wants. I I guess I said almost exactly what June said with other words, actually. No, no. But great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe.
I have a few comments here on, mechanical, the classic advice of Susokan of counting your breaths, doing it in this formulaic manner. I do think it's helpful when you're totally lost in a pit of anxiety, your mind is cycling, you don't even know what to do, maybe, and you need to use the mind to change the body, to change the mind. And you perhaps even don't have a lot of experience. Hey, it's a great place to start. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to count my breaths. Like, wow. I think that's fine. As the process grows, though, I found following the breaths to be very profound, and that frees me from the mechanical thinking about breath and allows it with all sorts of activity, like running, right? You try to do Susokan running. I challenge anyone, right? I actually have tried to really do slow, deep breathing running. It's kind of doesn't work that great, but following it in and out, you can do while running. You can do while cooking. You can do while working, right? And you can find yourself following that breath without attaching to how you're breathing and without doing that conscious breathing thing where, you get all wrapped around in your head and it's like, oh no, now I'm breathing, now I can't breathe naturally. There's this other thing where you can just be present to it without controlling it. And that for me, once I kind of got there, it was a game changer and I didn't have to try to be in control all the time, which I think is a lot of what this comes down to, is this feeling like you need to be in control. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it right. I'm going to be a good boy. I'm going to be a good girl. And there's a moment where it deepens. And if you can just open to it.
The Sosokan is about learning to unify the focus. That's what the Sosokan is really about. And partly what this is in some ways what this is that, like, say in the way that it was done in Asia, was that the breath is actually it's the go-between between what you can do voluntarily and involuntarily. So the breath deals with the lungs, which are an organ. And when you can deal with an organ, then the other organs are influenced by that. Okay. You can't really deal that well with the stomach. It's hard to interact with the stomach well, or with the liver, but you can interact with the lungs, and then they're an intermediary to the rest of the body. So that's interesting. So they're actually a way to work with the involuntary aspect of the system. I think that's interesting to think about. So that's why we use partly why we use the lungs. Is there a way to work with deeper aspects of the body? That's one interesting aspect, I think. I think also, what happens with the breathing is, okay, so with the exhalation, it's a big process, but what it does is it starts to unify the focus. So doing the exhalation is a way for me to bring my whole being into what I'm doing. Okay, and over time that kind of creates this animal that focuses. So for me in my process, just to talk about it a little bit, when I'm looking at something, or when I'm driving, or when I'm going to focus on something, my exhalation just starts to happen. So I'm looking at something, and that's my exhalation. And so it actually brings the system into oneness. So, I'll be there, and all of a sudden I'll just have this long exhale. It just will be what the body starts to do. And so like throughout the day, when, in daily life, taking, maybe 3 long exhalations and just doing that, and not with force, not with any kind of anything special. Just so your body starts to become this animal that kind of wants to do that. And then, when I do go into zazen or meditation, my body's sort of wanting to focus. It's sort of wanting to do this. And and then of course, as it really deepens, or as the process goes, we have to kind of let go of that. And the weird alchemy of zazen is that sometimes the breath does really wild things as the energy unifies, and I always talk about not getting in the way of the breath. There's this breath that's happening, and then I'm going to manufacture a breath on top of that, and I end up just getting in the way of the whole thing. This is just really common. Yeah, I think being consistent with maybe working on the exhales through life, through working, like I'm chopping, and I'm just taking, just letting that happen, not with force. And if it becomes forced, you tighten up, and then I can't do it with force. It doesn't work. And so just you slowly become this animal that when you're focusing, your body has come into oneness. And so it helps your whole system to unify. It's a big process. It can't be forced. And I talk about this a lot, that one time in the monastery, I'd been there for a while, and I had been trying so hard on my Sosokan. I've been just really going for it and trying so hard. And then as I was really feeling my system, it felt like my system needed something really different. And it felt like I inhaled for like 2 O sessions. For like a couple months, I felt like I was just inhaling, and so we, but I was there going, no, I gotta exhale, right? That whole thing we do. And so really feeling the system and letting it show us is a process of trust that kind of happens. And the feedback will be clear. I was like, trying to do this breath, and my whole system was trying to do something else. And so anyway, I'm always real cautious to try to prescribe controlling the breath in a certain way. But over time, it will want to, it'll become this animal that wants to unify, and the breath can be a way to really help with that without force. By the way, I've also had a lot of breathing problems, so I understand, and I really it was like I'm just a freaking problem, man. In Japan, I was just a mess with breathing at first, really terrible. I was the worst. Yeah. Let me babble just a second more. So like, you go to the Roshi for Sanzen, you go see him, and you're supposed to show him your breath for showing your breath. You're kind of showing. I'm going to show him. And over time you see, oh, he's looking for me to really, really unify. That's what he's really looking for. He's really looking for, really be there with him. That's what he's really looking for. So, oh, that's what this is about. He's really looking for my focus when I'm showing him that. So, and that's confusing. It's confusing for I can tell you, for a long time for people often. So I wouldn't anyway, I wouldn't force it. Yeah, yeah. Maybe I fire hosed you. I'm sorry.
Corey, would you say when the breath clicked, the whole quality of practice changed?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Yes, and for what I would say is that the chi and the breath, they're the same thing. And seeing that is where the practice leaps, and that unification in that is yeah, totally changes everything. So the breath can be this way, it can be this gate to go deeper into what's happening. And then am I dialoguing with it? Am I doing this or is it doing it? And then maybe it's a little bit of a dance there. And am I leading too hard? Yes. Back off and let it do it. And then, you know what I mean? Am I put a little bit of push and pull? I remember one time I went into the Roshi and I was like, oh, I was so crazy. I was so intense. And he's like, sometimes it's a pull door, I was there like pushing. I'm kind of raw, I'm kind of with everything. I'm trying so hard. Sometimes a pull door. So let it come. I was pushing. And so it's a whole push and pull internal feeling. Maybe, well, a lot of time we're like, well, it's got to be this way, right? And actually, it was coming. That's totally interesting, Elijah. Yeah, good way to put it. Nobody else is asking questions, so keep going if we're confusing.
Well, I had just a little insight of something I'd been pondering for a number of years. And it might be totally not useful or not interesting to anyone else, but uh, in the four great vows, there's this on the second line, there's this word used bono, klesha, and in Zen, it hasn't really been used in English. It's always used in Japanese and Chinese. And I'd really been really trying to understand the word for a long, long time. And the best explanation I heard was it's the clouds that go in front of the moon. And in Japanese, they differentiate the term from delusion. So the thing that can block off the shining of your wisdom and that not knowing it doesn't have to be a delusion. It doesn't have to be some imaginary thing you're even caught up in. It can be very useful, very practical, but you're attached. And I was sitting there doing our ZZ, and I was like, oh, here's this thing getting in the way of me really being there with the practice in the moment. It's a very simple thing the word is pointing to. Everything arises that's keeping me from really being there, harmonizing with the room, with the process. No wonder it's used so much. It's just a simple phrase. So I just wanted to share that. Maybe people have questions or something. But
Love it. And Elijah, just for us, the English translation that for that second, what would you have for that?
Well, they use the Sanskrit's kleshas, which a lot of people prefer, but you also see vexations or afflictions, which just doesn't fit the experience, right? It does, or they called afflicted passions. And I know my American mind just goes somewhere else with this.
Hey, Elijah, and the word obstruction that we hear a lot, where did it come from? Is that a good
You know,
word?
I like that. I actually think that might fit better. But I bet if you used it, all the translators would get angry at you if you translated something in that way.
I think June was asking, oh, you got it. Yeah, obstruction. Yeah.
I think another thing with the breathing is that I can't really speak to this because I didn't do the monastery thing, but as a lay person, you don't have the consistent kind of space that you probably do in the monastery. And I think what a lot of people experience is like they'll go into a session or something and oh they figure it out there, but then they come out and it's like all undone. Um and just for myself, one thing is that I think um I do think that these practices are really, really helpful for that. It's like a way, I think, at least to uh, um, work on this kind of these subtler physical processes that kind of creep in, that you have in lay life, and then you find, oh, I can't breathe again or something. This is such a like a clear, direct way to work with it, and that's really valuable because I think what I've seen a lot with in myself and others is that in practice, if you kind of fall in and out with session, then you kind of compromise. You're like, all right, well, I mean, I guess this just isn't possible or something, like this kind of really open energy, like that's not really it. That's just a special state or whatever, and so you start to kind of make your practice smaller. I think that happens a lot. And so, one thing that's awesome about this stuff is it kind of gives us a way to kind of keep the practice big, in us. And so yeah, I think these kind of physical practices are super, super helpful for this.
Totally true. Totally true. And also that's why a lot of people who actually leave a monastery, they end up doing some kind of body practice as a way to keep refining. That's part of it, is that they end up, yeah, their way to kind of keep working with it. Um, Backtracking for a second, what I partly feel happens with the again, Elijah was saying sort of following the breath. This is more, I think it's called Suisokan. It's the second stage. And so so often what happens in the Sokan, you're doing the breath, and then at a certain point, you let go and you're following the breath. And that's actually where this tandem energy starts to go through the system, and you're allowing this to happen. And and what I would say is that's what we do partly with the ZZ, is we get this energy momentum through the system, and that gets us to a place very similar to Suisokan. So that's part of why it's powerful, is the ZZ gets you to the where, oh, I'm actually following, let the energy come through the system, and that my breath is unifying with that, and that's where the Suisokan happens. So that's part of why I think these practices are really powerful and helpful in that. But sometimes with the Susokan, you're sort of getting the motor running. You're sort of, okay, I'm bringing things together, I'm doing it. And the Jamjong and the non-directed, they really do the same thing, as far as I can tell.
Maybe stupid question, but if you guys had like 30 minutes to practice, how would your practice look like, you know?
You mean once a day?
It's your last 30 minutes on Earth.
My last
Well,
30 minutes on Earth?
yeah, you have 30 minutes to practice, you know? 30 minutes Zazen, Jan Zhuang, lying down. I don't know.
But to be clear, there's an asteroid coming.
Yeah, just like those doomsday, you know? You're waiting for
Huh.
the meteor. It's okay.
Eh,
I gotta be here for these last 30 minutes. How am I gonna be here? You're alone,
Love.
no family, no shelter, no bunker, out on the field. I have 30 minutes. How am I gonna die? Of course I exaggerated, but it's like you have 30 minutes to do something. You know? It's like you have 30 minutes in the day. Okay, let's not die anyone. And you have to practice, you know, you're gonna spend it. I know Corey, you know, I think he rather stand. Some people would have Zazen instead. I would do like 10 minutes ZZ, 15 minutes Zazen, 5 minutes non-directed.
I don't know if I could plan it out ahead of time, man. Knowing myself, I think I would just find a way to love whatever is around me. It just wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't put so much control on the thing. Look up at the asteroid and
That's Janjuan. You're doing the whole
oh, it
dimension.
didn't even occur to me.
That kind of reminds me of the great Tai Chi master, Cheng Man Ching. And you know, somebody asked him, like, oh, if you're in a fight, like, what stance would you take? You know, like, you know, and he said, just like this. He's always like that. You know, he's always in this, he's always in it. He's basically like in Wuji. He's just always there, you know. I love that. I love that in a way. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. You know, he's already there. Sounds pretty, that's a pretty good one.
I just wanted to comment about the breath. Going back to the breath, not to beat a dead horse, but first, I guess I would probably just sit still to answer your question, Felipe. That's kind of my go-to is sitting. So I'd probably sit still and just feel. But as far as the breath goes, I don't really practice Susokan per se. What I kind of find endlessly fascinating, I guess, is using the breath to see where I'm getting in the way of it, and really kind of trusting that my body knows how to breathe better than I do. So I get really constricted in the chest sometimes, and then just feeling into the feeling of that. And sometimes it releases and sometimes it doesn't. You know, sometimes my breath is real shallow to right here. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes Sijin. Sometimes it's down in the tanden, but just using the breath to see where there's congestion in my system and feeling into that. And then I also found through exercise, you know, if I'm doing some sort of cardiovascular stuff, that's an awesome opportunity to really try to get out of the way and let my body breathe on its own. And then at work too, you know, I work as a firefighter and a paramedic, and a lot of times in kind of intense situations, the breath will just be there, and it's like, whoa, there it is, and I just get really clear. I'm not trying to do that or anything, but it just shows up in like intense situations. So that's just another observation. Yeah.
Actually, I think that's really interesting. Like, I would say that if there are 50 people in a meditation hall, there are 50 people doing approaching their Sosokan differently. So what would it be if like everything we were doing was Sosokan? It wasn't like, well, I'm doing that. When I do it that way, that means it's Sosokan. You know what I mean? Like, what if their whole life was Sosokan? The whole life was a way of interacting with that. And I think it's interesting to look at. And of course, there's maybe there's a method we learn, but you often can't get to the method through trying to make the method happen. So it's often like, okay, what is my life right now? And I'm interacting with it. And what is that? And I would say that is Sosokan. Like, I wasn't really a breath counter. Like, people translate Sosokan as breath counting, but I was never a breath counter. It wasn't really what I did. And I was like, I'd sit down and I was on this roller coaster. And so I was kind of like, how do I let this happen? How do I not get in the way of this? And that became my Sosokan, not like, you know, an idea of it. So what would it be if like our whole practice was this creative way of interacting with what's happening, and obviously through the whole body and the breath being a part of that. And I would say that's really Sosokan, not just the you know, count to 10. And if you fuck up after 5, then you know, whatever, you know, that idea that everybody has, you know, it's what if it's actually like deeper than that? And there are principles obviously that will show up, and it'll be like, oh yeah, like when you're in an intense situation, your whole body kind of lights up, and and how could that be that that's part of a continuum of this whole process? I really like thinking of it that way. And it's super creative. What's Elijah posting there? Yeah.
Sorry, that's the Hakuin's Rohatsu exhortations on breath,
Right.
and
Right.
where he lays it all out.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's exactly what you're talking about. This whole Susokan to Suisokan to, I forget the rest of the terms. So he's like, yeah, Su Zui Shi Kan Gen Jo. Count, follow, stop, see, forget, purify. And I don't know, it's so Genji. Did they read the Rohatsu exhortations every Rohatsu?
For sure.
Okay, so you got that. I mean, it just echoes in my mind, the exhortations.
Bore and Hakuin are pretty much yelling at me for sure. All the
You can still hear them.
God damn it, just shut up, you know. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Corey, that makes a lot of sense to me. I can tend to get caught up, I feel like, in trying to do it right and the method. And I've noticed recently, every time I talk to my teacher, it basically every question boils down to, am I doing it right? You know, I've noticed that over the last few months, and I've really been working with just trusting my process and not so much trying to do this something like you're saying Susokan. Like maybe I am doing that in a maybe a little bit different way, like my own way, but it's a way that feels really right. And it's like when I sit, there is something very true coming through that I can feel. And then sometimes I try to don't do that, try to do the method. And it's like maybe I would be better to be sitting with what it really feels true. I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah. Right. In what if all these these methods or whatever, what if they're like descriptions of what happens in the process? They're like often what will happen is like, oh, I sorry everybody, I'm feeling this. I have to let this happen. Maybe I'm like doing it wrong. And then you'll be doing that, and then true Susokan will happen. Like, or so it's like you couldn't get there by trying to get there, but you totally became what was happening. And then the very description that you've always read really happened. And so it can be very much like that, where instead of this, this recipe, like this much vanilla, this much cinnamon, you know what I mean? It's like I totally became what happened, and then there was Susokan, and so I think it's really interesting. It's really interesting to play with that. And then going back to it, I think it is good to focus on the lower body. Just to say about breath, focus on the lower body, focus on the legs, focus on the tendon, and the upper body is very seductive. It's very beautiful. It's very shining. It's very volatile. And I do think it is good to have like the blue collar work of working with the belly, trying to breathe through that and letting this all open. So what happens is a lot of us, because we don't have a really good base of this lower body work, the upper body will just get real clogged in that. We'll get real clogged and real lit up, and we call kifun, this rising ki. Your face will be flushed, and so having the lower body and having the tendon be this it can kind of usher us through all this drama in the upper body. Like it kind of gently, I'm with the tendon as I kind of walk through the entanglements, and otherwise we get really locked up in all this. So it's a big process of letting this all slowly open, and it's beautiful, and not get too smeared by it over and over. I mean, I've been smeared, I'll tell you, a million times, but just over time letting this lower body change the body so that the body, the energy can really process. So good blue collar plus like letting go, that whole thing, that whole dialogue, you know?
What's coming to mind is breathing's such a natural thing. What's actually inhibiting it? And I'm observing in particular like a strong breath control kind of pattern right around the base of the neck, which seems to be a pervasive core choke point, lock point in the body in general, which there's this kind of constant tracking. It's like going towards it doesn't work. Trying to be all away from it doesn't work. And it's like literally it just wants space. And I will also admit that for reasons that I'm not completely clear on, I put my entire practice on hold for the last 5 days while I stepped into like a parental caregiver type situation, and I'm back on the East Coast. And I think there's partly this weird kind of identification with not wanting to practice, wanting to be bad, act out, like uh and this sense of like, well, I can't really go into my stuff right now, or this sense of like, well, if I go into things, I'll identify with things, they'll make me worse, or like this isn't the time to feel my emotions, and this isn't my time. And I those are just things coming up. I don't know exactly what it, I mean, it's not just one thing, but it's a very familiar pattern. I get interested in practice. I give up on practice because I'm not just one thing, and I want to practice and I don't want to practice. Like I'm interested in life, I'm not interested in life, basically. I want to engage, I don't. And there's, yeah, this, I don't know if I could quite call it anti-breath, but this kind of a fearful watching force that like doesn't trust the breath and just wants to like squeeze it to death and demand it be a certain way. It's like the don't let go force.
Yeah. Yep.
This might sound kind of dumb, but when I really waif and waffle into one side of that, like especially if some new responsibilities come up and I'm all like a total mess trying to scramble. Generally, if I can manage just to not do the worst thing, it's better. I know this sounds like the worst advice, but like, say, hey, think of the worst thing you can do. Don't do that. Right. But there's something here. Like if you can just manage some form of a connection at least once a day to to that energy, right? To keep that thread going is better than nothing. I'm not going to say like it's great, but if you can just manage to always keep that thread alive, it helps to grow it.
That sounds like wonderful advice. What I'm seeing with and has me kind of starting to see, I think starting to really allow my conscious and has me like, well, what the fuck do I do? Is that like self-destruction is actually an ego systemic behavior. Like I keep doing this. I have this pattern because I'm attached to the pattern and I like it. It's serving a function in my life.
What would it look like if like, okay, what you want is practice. What would that look like? Like what if when you were bad, that was practice? You know what I mean? What if it's like, oh, there's practice and then there's when I'm bad, like what would it be if like what you really want is the thread that all of that is a part of? So maybe whenever I'm bad, what part of that is still your deepest eh, urge, your deepest want, or that it's still pulling you into the truth? Wonder about that. So maybe it isn't like I'm holy and then I'm evil, all that. Go ahead. You're gonna say something.
I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but like the attempt for personality annihilation with addiction uh versus like the maybe personality annihilation is not quite it, but there's that kind of like silencing, letting go, like a sense of like a way of dialoguing with personality chokehold by stepping into some kind of mystery that somehow like pulls away its hard edges, like they fall away versus like, well, I'm just gonna eat X million calories or whatever, and I'm just like, and that's a way of like managing like personality crisis, like a way of like transcendence through like annihilation through acting out.
I would suspect that there's some aspect of what you really want that I really feel like what we really want, we have to really get in touch with that. And then we see, oh, that's what all this stuff is about. It's what all this stuff is about. It's about what I really want and how can I use that and see that? And so, like this thing, we're like salmon coming home to spawn, so we're like being pulled into this process. Until we come back, the salmon's all kind of got like a chunk out of it, or banged into a rock, you know what I mean? And some bear tried to eat it, but it's like this thread that it had to get to this, it had to come home to spawn, right? And I just would suspect that there's some aspect where you're working out, or your system needs to explore something, and it's acting in this way, but it's really this thread of what you want, and how can you um, maybe find that thread through wherever you're going with this swinging and all that. There's something that's still there that you run, and it's trying to happen, and exploring that, you know it's in a way, this isn't really moral work. It's sort of amoral in that way, not immoral, but just, it's not like this is good and that's bad. It's like, okay, what's really happening here? What do I really want? And we're in this good bad head. And so, Leonard Cohen, when we're not feeling holy, loneliness, what is it? Tells, like, I forget. Yeah, but do it. Tell me, Elizabeth, what is it?
I'm having trouble with English today, but it's something like, if we're not feeling holy, the loneliness says that you sinned.
Right, right. And anyway, like, what's the thread through that? And I mean, a lot
What's
of people
coming to mind is power, vitality, and a sense of control, and one's a sense of some kind of control and like a sense of like safety and like agreeing to like it's not even agreeing, like a sense of safety that comes out of like somehow like what if I can let go of like another layer of control, and it's like the very attempt to control is what creates the safety because it's an inescapable just attempt to pin concepts in place. Like if I just know exactly every line in my checking account, I will be safe. And the other just feels like this incredible like power grasp of like, well, okay, like I'm tired of like just feeling so disempowered in like this world that I don't understand that's so big and scary. And it's like, well, all right, fuck everything. Like I can at least do this. I am in power. I can self-destruct in my terms.
Um, as I said, I'm not really following all the English today. I don't know what happened. But I'm wondering, David, if somehow it's this energy that's just curled up inside you and just wants to come out and and um and yeah, do something really silly and yeah, just doing that. Yeah, just let it be silly and do something really stupid and something you didn't like and find out that that's okay.
I think you're actually quite on to something. There's a lot to explore here.
You know, you know, these koans, they're all about these wild people, right? They're not about like people looking sad in a Zendo, you know, like that are really, emaciated, sad people, you know, like that's just that's not really what it's, they're pretty wild. And so what actually, if Zazen or practice was about this, liberation, this wildness. And it doesn't mean that you've got to be, maybe you do need to be kind of wild and crazy, and that's great. But, maybe Zazen is this wild, letting this wildness through. What if it was like, what if it was opening up everything and letting all the, all the wildness through? And or what if walking around was a way to let all this wildness through? That's the secret, is everybody thinks it's like about control, but actually it's not. It's like, it's actually about letting go of control all the time. And we think, well, I let go of control, then I'll be a mess. Actually, that's where the liberation is. That's where the real Zen people, the real practitioners, they're laughing all the time and they're goofy and they're not sad. I mean, we go through sad times, obviously, in the process. That's how it is. But actually, the people who really done training, they're happy because they've let the gates open and they, and that's, it's really about this wildness and then the problem is that then we don't fit into any box anymore, right? Which is great, and but wouldn't that be interesting if the practice was a way for me to explore that wildness that's there. Not a way that I got to contain that, I got to do this good thing, and then I get so tired of that, then I've got to explode and do something else. That's, what if actually they're the most rebellious people? That's the most rebellious thing, is actually they're exploring that through these simple mediums of practice. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like maybe this practice is like the only way I know how to like find some way to like psych the psychology into like dropping, like letting go of another layer of its control patterning. It's like that's you're not a psychologist, but there's nothing. I think I'm just ready to start seeing a little more that just like trying to control everything, just like a sense of like I'm not safe, I'm not safe. just like I need to be a certain way, I need to be a certain way, and I need to control everything, and everything needs to work out okay. And then it's like then I get the rebellion against all that control, and that's the patterning.
Yep.
Hyper control and a certain kind of like hyper controlled tailspin.
David, something just came to me randomly, and that is you might explore working with the voice, um, because you can be very wild with the voice, and it doesn't tend to harm anyone else. And it's a really good means of working with things. For myself in particular, it was very transformative of working with finding freedom in my voice.
That absolutely tracks.
A couple of things come to mind for me too. There were two things that have been helpful regarding that topic. One is a book called Iron John by Robert Bly, who uses the myth of Iron John to find that wild man, and to release that. Also, there's a talk on YouTube by Marion Woodman. I could post a link. It's on holding the tension of the opposites and finding this kind of third option, this creative option. I found those things to be helpful. Might help you too with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, David, I think you're onto something. You articulate really well. I can see that you're at least aware of the issues. That's like half of the way, I guess. So yeah, keep going. You're doing great. I think you're very aware of the stuff that's happening. And as being someone weird or wild, my son tells me, man, Dad, you're random. Sometimes you joke and then you're mad, then you meditate, then you sing, and then yeah. There's a lot of colors in the rainbow. If there's no need to be, the quiet one or the one who talks a lot. You can do all these things. There's no you can choose how you're gonna be really, really deeply, and that's wonderful. That's wonderful. To meditate, to go to a rock concert, have partners, do whatever, and still know who you are. That's completely possible.
I think I just needed to admit that I'm not experiencing freedom in my life and be reminded that I actually have that kind of freedom and yeah, vexations, glaciers. It's like it's not literally like they're only as real as we think they are, but I want to say it's like this kind of an energetic stranglehold, and it seems less and less real, maybe. And like, why do I actually believe I'm in a prison? Like, oh, you tell me I've got a lot more freedom than I think. Oh, well, shit, I do. Contraction, literally. I can't. What?
Another thing I would just throw in there is that we've seen you change a lot. So like a lot, and and maybe this process is maybe this process is happening and it's trying to happen, and that we talked about this, you changed a lot, and maybe you're coming to this because the it's blooming and you need, and it's trying to happen, and that's why you're encountering this, is that your system is it's expanding, and where where you've been holding, where you've been tight, it's melting in that. So just letting that in the process that's coming through, let that process express, let it through, let it, let that brightness that we've seen happen with you, let that brightness flourish, it's like that often. It's like, it's kind of, oh, I didn't know that was happening. I couldn't quite feel it, but that was happening. That's interesting, Really wonderful. Well, a great conversation. Anybody want to chime in that hasn't talked yet? The Joe down there, the turning into the fly down there, getting sick. I'll never forget that one time when Joe was in the bath during one of our calls. That was awesome. That was the best.
It's the middle of the night where you all are.
Right. Okay, great. John, you got anything to throw in there to the mix? No? Wish we could all go have some tea or some whatever, some coffee or something together and just be wild and crazy and stupid, which is how I am most of the time. Maybe I fake it on here, but actually I'm the goofball, in case that wasn't clear.
I think the shirt gives it away.
Yeah, don't, the show isn't good though, but the books are good. Camp Half-Blood, they're good books. That my daughter got me this one. It's good. They're good books. Thanks, everybody. Let's keep going. What a great conversation. Really, really rich, I think. Really good conversation today. I'll be here at 1 my time. Okay. It's really icy out. I'm gonna walk home. It's real icy. I hope I don't fall and bump myself. On the island here, was like 17. I forget what that is in Celsius, but it's like 17 here this morning, and the whole island can't handle when it snows. It just everybody just balls, and it was -9. Yeah, everybody just lays at home, and so I walked to work this morning, and now I'll walk home, and then I'll come back in a little bit for the class. Please join me if you can. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Okay.